Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play Encyclopedia from Holy Grail Games. First, each player chooses a color and then takes one player board, Game Aid extension, and the character extension. It doesn't matter which one you choose, it has no effect on the game. Then all these research cubes and also these tokens which represent 5 cubes. The reputation token is placed on the first space of the reputation track, and the score tokens of all players are placed on the 0 space of this scoring track. Randomly choose the first player and that player takes this first player token. Then take these round tokens and randomly place one face down on each of these spaces on the round track, and you can return unused tokens back to the box. Then shuffle this deck of expert cards and deal 6 cards face up on these spaces at the university, and the deck of the remaining cards can be placed next to the game board. Shuffle this deck of animal cards, and again you can place the deck somewhere next to the game board and deal 6 cards face up on these spaces at the academy. In a 3-player game you would also deal the 7th card, and in a 4-player game you would also place 1 card in this space. Now in the reverse player order, so from the last player to the first player, each player chooses any 2 animal cards from the display, but do not refill the empty spaces. And those 2 cards you choose from the display are placed somewhere in your play area. Only after all players have chosen their cards, refill the empty spaces from the draw deck. Finally, each player takes 1 expedition token, and then the first player takes 2 coins, second and third player would take 3, and the fourth player would take 4. In Encyclopedia, each player represents 1 adventurer, 1 scientist, who is helping Georges Louis Leclerc to complete his most important work, the Encyclopedia. Encyclopedia was one of the most important writings of that era. So the players in this game will conduct research and organize ambitious expeditions, and then publish the findings in the Encyclopedia. The game is played in 6 rounds, and each round players will first draw dice from the bag, and then, starting with the first player and continuing in a clockwise direction, players will take turns, and on your turn you will choose 1 die, either your own die or one of the dice of your opponents, and then perform one of the 6 actions with that selected die. You can either gain some expedition tokens, or take some money, or choose an expert from the university, or choose an animal which you're going to study, or you can organize an expedition where you will study your chosen animals, and the last option is to publish your findings from your expeditions. That's the end of your turn, and then it's the next player's turn. Once all players have taken all their turns, the round will be over. You would prepare the game board for the next round, and if it's the end of the 6th round, the game will be over. And in addition to the victory points you gain over the course of the game, mainly by publishing the results from your expeditions, you will also score victory points from the collection of cards, experts and animals from the same continent, and then when you sum up all the points, the player with the most points is the winner. Now let's take a look at one round of the game. Each round starts with refilling the animal cards and the expert cards. You can skip this in the first round of the game because it's part of the setup. Then in the next step, flip over the leftmost round token and then apply the effect of that token. These effects apply to all players in the game, and you can find their description in the rulebook. Then, if you haven't done so yet, return all the dice into the bag, and then starting with the first player and continuing clockwise, each player will randomly draw 4 dice from the bag and roll those dice. Place each die in one of these 4 spaces at the top of your player board. You can distribute them any way you want, so each die can be placed in any spot. However, each space can only contain 1 die. The only exception is a situation when you draw this type of round token with a die, which means that in addition to those 4 dice, each player draws 1 additional die, and then one of those 4 spaces will contain 2 dice instead of 1. Then in the next phase, players will take turns, starting with the first player and continuing in a clockwise direction. And on your turn, first you have to choose 1 die, and there are 2 options. You can either choose one of your own dice. For example, this yellow player would choose his own yellow 6, or you can also choose an opponent die. For example, if this was the red player's turn, the red player could choose any die of the yellow player. For example, the red player would need this purple 6, and in return, the yellow player gains the corresponding benefit. Here, the yellow player would gain 2 reputation points. If the red player would take this die, the yellow player would gain 3 victory points. Here, you would gain 2 coins, and this space doesn't provide any benefit. So, after you choose a die, you will take an action with the die, and that action will often depend on the value and the color of the chosen die. At the end of your turn, the die you have used for the action could be placed somewhere next to the game board, or you can place it on the action space where you took the action. With that, your turn is over and it's the next player's turn. Now I'm going to describe all the actions. The first action is the embassy action, located in the top left corner of the game board. When you take this action, you gain certain amount of the expedition tokens based on the value of the die you have used for the action. Values 1 or 2 give you 1 token, value 6 would give you 3 tokens. The color of the die is irrelevant. The expedition tokens are placed in your play area and you can use them in 2 different ways. When you choose the die for your action, if you spend an expedition token, you can change the color of the chosen die. You don't change the physical color, obviously, you simply say that this is not a purple die, for the turn it's a red die. And the second option how to spend your expedition tokens is this expedition action. When you take this action, when you spend that expedition token here, you can increase the value of your die by 2. The second action is the bank action, located in the top right corner of the game board. When you take this action, you immediately gain 5 coins. The color and the value of the chosen die in this case is completely irrelevant. And the coins are also placed in your supply. And the first player who takes this action in a round gains the first player token for the next round. It doesn't change the player order in the current round. However, this new first player is considered to be the first player for any other potential game effects. The coins in your supply can be used to increase the value of the chosen die for the current turn. For each coin you spend, each coin you return back to the general supply, you can increase the value of the die by 1. So this 5 can be turned to 6. You can even increase the value to more than 6. And for example, if needed, I can take this 1, pay 5 coins, and I can turn this 1 into a 6. Just to reiterate, I can even change the color of this die by spending 1 expedition token. The next action is the university action, where you can gain one of the available experts. The value of the die doesn't matter. You can choose any card of any expert in the display and place it in any of these empty expert spaces on your player board. Although the value of the die is irrelevant, the color is relevant. Because if you take an expert card which has the same color bar as the color of the chosen die, you immediately gain 1 expedition token. Do not refill the empty spaces after these experts, they remain empty. Other players then have fewer options. There are 3 types of experts in the game. The experts with this infinity symbol give you some permanent effect which you can use over the course of the entire game. The expert cards with the flash symbol give you some immediate effect which you don't have to use immediately when you take this expert card. This one, for example, gives you 5 coins. You can use this immediate effect anytime on your turn, and when you do, flip the card face down to indicate that it has been used already. The cards with this symbol have effects which are applied at the end of the game. When you gain a new expert and all the spaces on your player board are full, you can place the new card on top of the cards in any spot. which means you can only have 4 active experts at any time in the game, which means if you cover one of your active experts, the new one will be the active, the other one is inactive. Inactive cards are still kept in the stacks because they will be counted at the end of the game, you just no longer have its effect available. When you gain a new card and you don't want to cover any of your existing active experts, you can place this new one underneath any of your active experts. You will also count it at the end of the game, you just don't use its effect at all. The next action is called the Academy action. With this action, you will choose one of the available animal cards. You can always choose only one card, and the card has to have the same color as the color of the chosen die, so in this case, it can only be a purple animal card. And again, just repeating that you can spend an expedition token and change the color of the die to any color you want. For example, we can turn it into blue color, and then we can take the blue animal card, place the card into your play area, and then based on the value of the chosen die, you will gain 1, 2, or 3 reputation points. For each reputation point you gain, advance your marker 1 step forward, and when you reach or pass one of the bonuses, gain that bonus immediately. Again, you can find all these bonuses in the rulebook, but in a nutshell, with this bonus you gain another expedition token. With this one, you gain another expert card, either from the display, or if the display is empty, you take it from the top of the deck. With this one, you gain 3 coins. With this bonus, you gain another animal card. And when you reach the last space, you gain a Royal Seal token. When you are in the last space of the track and you gain another reputation point, move back to the first space of the track and continue moving forward, and you also gain all these bonuses again. You may easily complete this track several times over the course of the entire game. The color of the card and also the symbols on the cards represent various categories of animals. The colors determine the continent where those animals live. The red color is America, purple is Asia, green color represents Australia, the yellow color is for Africa, and the blue color represents Europe. Then this first category, the first research category, determines whether the animal is a bird, mammal, or a reptile. Then this is carnivorous, herbivorous, and omnivorous animal. The third category determines the habitat, arboreal, aquatic, or terrestrial. And the last category determines the climate where the animal lives, cold, hot, or this is a symbol for a temperate climate. So those are the categories for research during your expeditions and what you publish in the Encyclopedia. With the expedition action, you will research your animals. First, choose a continent where you're going to study your animals. Let's say in our example it's going to be Europe. And to take the action, place the die of the same color as the color of the continent in the leftmost available space in this continent. Obviously, you can use a die of a different color and then change its color by spending the expedition token. Depending on the placement of a die, you may gain some reputation points. Here it will be 2 reputation points. If you would place a die in this first space, you would gain 3 reputation points. Later expeditions earn fewer reputation points. The value of the die determines the value of the expedition. Here the initial value of the expedition is 4, and you will increase this number in multiple ways. First, increase the value of the die immediately by this symbol. There's no bonus below the first space, but here there's 1 pip, which means the value of this die is automatically increased by 1. Similarly, the value of the die in this space would be increased by 3, and so on. Then for each expedition token you spend, increase the value of the expedition by 2. And during one expedition you may spend any number of expedition tokens. Also, each coin you spend increases the value of the expedition by 1. And if you spend this Royal Seal token, you can increase the value by 5, and at the same time you can also change the color of the die. Some experts may also change the value of the die, so in this example, the value is 4 plus 1, that's 5, plus 5 is 10, 12, 14. So the value of this expedition is 14 points. Once you have determined the final value of the expedition, you can start researching the animals from that continent. For each type of research, you have to spend certain amount of expedition points. 2 points for the first type, 4 points for the second type, and so on. These types or categories correspond to the categories on the cards. This is the level 1 category, this is level 2, this one is level 3, and this shape is for the level 4 category. You can research any number of categories on any number of animal cards from the same continent. For each research, use the research cube and reduce the number of expedition points. So for example, for this second category, you have to spend 4 expedition points. So from those 14 original, we only have 10. And when you research the second, third or fourth category, you immediately score 1, 3 or 6 victory points. When you do, move your token on the scoring track. If you have any expedition points remaining, you can continue doing the research. This research of another second category would cost you 4 expedition points, so that is 8 in total. So now we have 6 points remaining. That is enough to research all these 3 first categories. Any unspent expedition points are lost. That's why you need to plan carefully what you want to research and how many expedition points you need. All tokens and coins you have spent for the expedition are returned back to the general supply. And finally, the last action is the publication. This is a significant source of victory points in the game. And you start this action with selecting one animal, which is called the reference animal. This card determines which categories you can use for publishing, also from other cards. You can move this card slightly away from other cards to show which one is the reference card and also which categories are then those reference categories. And then, to take the action, you need the die of the same color as the color of this reference card. Remember, you can change the color of the die by spending the expedition token and the value of the die by spending coins. Or you may take the die from another player, then take the die and place it on this reference card, and the value of the die determines which categories you will be able to publish. You can find those requirements on this Game Aid extension. With value 2, you can only use the color of the cards for publication. With value 3, you can publish the first category. And in our example with research cubes on categories 2 and 3, we need the value for the third category, which is number 5 on the die. So we can spend 2 coins to increase the value from 3 to 5. Only now we can publish. Starting with the highest category on the reference card, so here it's category 3, you can start publishing your research cubes from all your animal cards with the exact same research category. Here we have terrestrial animals. Here we have another animal card with the same research cube of the same category, and here as well. You don't have to publish all of these research cubes. You can choose which ones you publish. If you want, you can even use the research cubes only from the reference card. However, you must publish the research cubes from this reference card. Let's say we would publish the cube from this card and also the research cube from this one. All these animals are terrestrial animals, so take the research cubes from these animals and place these cubes to the corresponding category on the game board in the publication area. For each research cube here, you gain the indicated number of victory points, so here we will gain 15 points. And then on that reference card, move to the next highest category and repeat the entire process. Finally, you can publish your animal cards for these continents for the category 0. And now you have to take all the cards you have published at least one research cube from during this publication action. That's why you move them slightly away from other cards. In case there are any remaining research cubes on these cards, all these research cubes have to be discarded now. And in addition to the cards you have published the research cubes from, you can choose any additional cards from the same continent as the reference card, even though you have not published any research cubes from these cards. but any remaining research cubes on these cards would be discarded. So if you don't want to do that, you don't have to use those cards. And then from all those selected cards, take all the cards which are from the same continent as the reference card. Place these cards face down next to your player board. You will score these cards at the end of the game in your collections. And all those other cards, the cards which don't have the same color as the reference card, will be discarded. These cards will not be scored at the end of the game. Anyway, for all of these cards, you would score 1 victory point immediately. As the very last step of the publication, you take 1 Royal Seal token, which you can change for 5 coins at any time during your turn. Or during the expedition, you can use it to increase the value of the expedition by 5 and change the color of the die. Or you can use it to take another turn at the end of the round, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. One last note, if you have too many research cubes in one category on the main board, you can exchange 5 cubes for this 5 cube token at any time. When all players spend all their dice, the round will be over, and if any player has a Royal Seal token, that player may decide to use that token now and take another extra turn. Choose any die that was used this round, roll the die, and you can take any action with the color and the value of the die. As always, you can change the value and the color of the die using the standard rules. This extra turn is optional, so if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. Players can use this extra turn starting with the first player and then continuing clockwise. You can only take 1 extra turn this way, and when all players had a chance to do it, the round is over. All the remaining animal cards and the expert cards are discarded, all dice are returned back to the bag, and the new round begins. The game ends at the end of round 6. All players discard all their remaining animal cards in front of them together with any research cubes on them. However, make sure you keep the published animal cards. If you have any expert cards which have the endgame effects, those effects are triggered now, and all players can do them simultaneously, and then proceed to final scoring. During the final scoring, you will score victory points for the collection of your cards, and also the collections of your research cubes in the publication area, and you score the points based on the table printed on your player aid. First, score the collection of the research cubes. Based on this table, the red player has 9 research cubes here. Those would be worth 22 points. These 8 cubes are worth 17 points. For these 10 cubes, the yellow player would gain 28 points. For these 3 and 2 cubes, there are no victory points. The minimum is the collection of 4 elements. And if any collection would be larger than 12 elements, for each other element you would score 5 victory points. Then score the collections of your animal cards and the expert cards from the same continent. And don't forget that you would score all your expert cards, even the inactive ones or the cards which have been flipped face down. So here we have a collection of 4 blue cards, 6 green cards, and again 4 red cards. These 2 yellow cards and this purple card would be worth nothing. The victory points for these collections are awarded in the same way as for the research cubes. 4 cards are worth 3 points, 6 cards are worth 8 points, and so on. Finally, you score 4 victory points for each remaining Royal Seal token, 1 victory point for each remaining 2 coins, 1 point for each remaining expedition token, then sum up all the points and the player with the most points is the winner. So that's how you play Encyclopedia. If you would have any questions or comments, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can support the channel on the Patreon page or directly under the video by clicking thank you button. My name is Branislav Berec. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell and hope to see you next time. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.